Today we're going to be taking a look at this PlayStation 5. It has no image and has visible signs of damage on the HDMI. Let's open it up, take a look and see what we find. Let's get into the video. I think I found the issue. You can see the HDMI port is fairly mangled. Let's open this up and get it fixed. Opening it up isn't too difficult. You simply pull up a little bit and it slides right down and off. And the same here. Someone's definitely been in here. Looks like we've got some missing screws. Let's go ahead and take this all apart and see what's up. I'm gonna go with a T8 here. That pulls out easy. And we got a couple more screws down in here. Super dusty. But you can tell someone's definitely been in here, as those are not my fingerprints.
Have you ever just asked why? Why in the world would somebody or a company do something this extreme? We'll disconnect the coax connectors. And slide out these other flex cables. Now we can lift off the shield.
I'll remove these two screws. I can tell that they've attempted the repair, or maybe it was repaired once before, but that blob of solder is not factory. So I think they got into the repair and decided, you know what, this might be too much for me to handle. And that's why they sent it to me, because I can handle it.
It looks like the HDMI IC puked out its guts. This might be an issue, but let's see if just replacing the HDMI will work. And add some flux, add some low melt solder to ensure that I don't pull any of the pads when removing. Add some flux to the bottom, wick away the solder. I can tell that these are pretty mangled. Someone has definitely tried and done a number on these on this board. I'm going to add some low melt solder again just to ensure that we have an easier removal of the HDMI itself. We'll do the same on this side as well. And then using some hot air from below, I'm going to heat up and remove that HDMI. Add some flux.
You can tell that this has definitely been worked on before, because the through holes there for the legs of the HDMI are definitely mangled.
And then we'll wick away all of that low melt. we'll see if we can oik away the through holes here for the legs of the HDMI. Using some hot air here will help in the removal process if you are struggling in removing the solder from the holes. We'll clean it up.
Looks a lot better. You can kind of see the damage done from whenever this was repaired before, or attempted to be repaired, who knows. Alright, let's flip it over.
And I'm going to do the same from the back side, as there tends to be solder. Clean it all up now that we've got those holes exposed.
Yeah, whoever did this repair before mangled those quite a bit, because they shouldn't look nice. It's kind of like this section right here. It should be like that all the way around, nice and pretty, but I mean, this is all ground plane, so it doesn't matter that it's mangled. We just need the legs to go through. But it is nice to have the edges exposed, more or less than they are. So, but yeah, this is nice and clean. None of the pads are pulled, so this is ready to receive a new HDMI. All right, got a brand new PS5 premium HDMI.
All the pins look good. We'll go ahead and set it in there. Add some flux.
I heat up the pin, it sucks off the solder off of the iron. And I'll see it, you can actually see when it transfers down to the pad. On some of these like that, it transfers down to the pad, and then you can pull away. And that way I know that I definitely got enough solder, because it's coated not only the underside of the pad, or the underside of the leg, but it's also coating the top of the leg and rolling all the way down to the pad on the board. So I'm positive that I have a solid solder joint. Touching the leg and the pad at the same time, and you can see the solder transfer. See, right now it's just on the pin, and boom, you see it suck down to the pad. Boom. Add a little bit more, there we go. See, it's just on the pin and boom, sucks down to the pad. Only 5 left. On the pin. And to the pad.
Now we're missing a little 0.1 microfarad capacitor here on those two pads. I'll replace that as well.
Solid. So there we go. Nice, solid. No bridging between them. I'm confident there's plenty of solder on each one of those, and that each has made contact with the pads. Now I'll flip the board over, and you can see the legs sticking there through the holes. Come in here and add plenty of solder. Plenty of solder on all of the legs. And what I like to do for some added measure is add some flux here. And we're going to put the iron against the side and try to pull some of that solder up and through the holes there. You gotta see that it's snuck up there. Do the same on the other side.
This is 183 solder, so it's a little harder for it to come up through the holes. Alright, we'll carefully plug back in the connectors. And I'm hoping that the only issue right here is the HDMI. So I'm going to go ahead and reassemble it just to see if that's it. Go ahead and turn it on and see if anything happens. I don't get any blue light, and
I thought about it a little bit more and looked back. It looks like we are missing the diode right there. That's one of the HDMI diodes. So let's go ahead and put a diode back there and see if that's why we're not getting any image. Alright, replace the diode there. If I unplug the HDMI and put it back in, it's going to check for it, but we still have no HDMI signal from the device. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out the next step.
we'll add some flux so that we can carefully remove and replace this Panasonic chip. It's a pretty expensive chip, so that's why I was trying to avoid replacing it. It's like a $40 chip. But, you know, it looks like it definitely puked its gut out, so we'll add some hot air. And the tweezers, it'll let me know when it's ready. It'll start to move. I can then lift it off. And there we go. And take some more solder. I'm just gonna go over all the pads and make sure there's nothing wrong with them. We'll wick that off now. And we'll wick off all the pads as well. I want to make sure none of that plastic pukey stuff is left on it. We'll clean it up. And I'm going to take some solder paste and we'll add it to all of the pads. Make sure they have roughly equal same amount. We'll make sure they have roughly the same amount on each one of the pads. With some extra in the middle there. We'll clean that up and get a new chip. We'll add some flux. Line it up. Make sure the dot's in the right corner. These chips are fairly easy to align. You just have to make sure the corner of the chip is touching basically the center of those gold squares on each corner. And then you know that you're aligned. Now if you've never replaced one of these types of chips, they're pretty straightforward. You heat it up to the point where you can push down on it. Squeeze out is completely acceptable with this type of chip versus other BGA chips where you can't put any downward pressure on them, otherwise you're going to bridge all of the solder joints under it. We'll heat it up with some hot air, and as soon as the solder in the very middle starts to melt, you'll notice the chip will somewhat drop and the flux will spread everywhere. That's kind of my gauge for solder is melted, so I can start pushing down on it. There you go, you can see it's starting to kind of ripple out from under it. So now I can gently push down on it. And pushing down on it, you might get some squeeze out with the solder from under it, and that's completely acceptable in these repairs. While it's still warm, I'm just going to make sure I've centered it completely by tapping it in the direction that it needs to go. And we'll let it settle in place. Give it one last push down and pull the heat away. And there we go. I'll take my chisel soldering iron and carefully go along the edges, ensuring that I remove any bridging. For example, right here, I'm going to add some flux, go in with my soldering iron, and a single little touch will remove it. Just like that. And then any solder joint that doesn't look like it's making a good solid connection, I'm going to go over it until it looks like it has received the solder. Like that. And there you can see the third one in looks a little bit weird, and same with that first one. So we'll add some flux. And we'll go in and scrape back and forth until they both look really good. There we go, and there we go. It's looking a lot better. Same here, we've got this fifth one in, looks a little weird. Go in with the iron and gently scrape at it until enough solder is deposited in that area, like that. That one looks a little, there we go. And we'll do the same on this side. A little bit of flux. The iron until that one that looks a little off looks like the rest. Like, there we go. If you aren't aware, flux acts as almost like a cleaning agent. It protects the solder and prevents oxidation. And one of the side effects is that it helps the solder kind of naturally flow where the heat source is. And we'll get rid of the and we'll do the same on the last side. You can see this one needs a little bit more solder. There we go. It's looking a little bit better. Let's add some more flux and make that a little bit shinier. And there we go.
Let me just test. Make sure we're getting a good connection. Yep. And we're getting a good reading there. So clean up that area and let's go and test it. All right, I've got it kind of back together. Let's plug in the power in the HDMI there. Go ahead and turn it on and see if we get even a blue light. Hey! And do we get any image? Hey, there we go. Boom, restarted, and we're on. And that's normal.